Founded in 1976 by ministers, activists, and lawyers, the Southern Center for Human Rights has long held to the words of Dr. King.
That our nation must undergo a radical revolution of values.
One that calls into question the fairness and justice of our past and present.
For 45 years, we have answered Dr. King's call, working to challenge a criminal legal system in the Deep South
that devalues equality, dignity, and justice.
In this past decade, Georgia has removed more people from voter lists due to felony conviction than any other state.
The Southern Center works to uproot the Jim Crow practice of felony disenfranchisement by actively confronting the remnants of slavery in the South
and empowering the most intimidated and suppressed voters in Georgia.
Before the 2020 elections, we sent over 11,000 absentee ballot requests into county jails,
making it possible for people jailed while awaiting trial to cast their ballots in the national and runoff elections.
We have defended the rights of those challenging voter suppression under the Gold Dome and beyond.
We advocate for people who are silenced and ignored.
The Southern Center's litigation has unearthed abuses of power and shone a light on the chaotic, dangerous conditions in prisons and jails.
We honor the dignity of those locked inside by carrying the voices of people who have experienced these torturous conditions out of isolation
and into action to end the practice of solitary confinement. We continue to litigate and advocate to prevent new death sentences and executions
and to abolish the death penalty once and for all.
We grow, empower, and learn from coalitions of committed changemakers.
The Southern Center has joined in coalition with Communities Over Cages to dismantle Atlanta's over-reliance on incarceration and to combat efforts to walk back bail reform.
Because we know that caging people and then requiring them to pay for their freedom does not make us safer.
We honor a strong, revolutionary Black organizing history in Georgia and recognize that city and rural Georgians alike are more capable of determining for themselves what they need.
Grounded in the belief that social transformation begins on the local level, we have partnered with the Georgia NAACP to form Just Georgia,
a new coalition to address the needs of Georgians impacted by systems of oppression and to shift interactions between Black people and the state.
At the Southern Center, we know that a criminal legal system built on a foundation of racial violence and oppression will always resist equality, suppress dignity, and sidestep true justice.
We do this work
because we believe in our power to effect change.
We do this work
because our clients trust us to hold their stories, struggles, and joys in a world that would rather they be forgotten.
We do this work
through tears and anger because we know, in the words of Adonati Roy, that another world is not only possible, but on its way.
We choose this work
in hope and optimism.
For 45 years, your support has allowed us to stand firm in our values and to agitate for systemic change in the Deep South that reverberates throughout our nation.
Thank you for choosing this work with us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Churchill, and I'm a lawyer at Morrison Foerster's Washington office. On behalf of Morrison Foerster, I'd like to welcome you to the Southern Center for Human Rights' 21st Annual Awards Dinner. We support wholeheartedly the Southern Center and its mission, and in particular, tonight's deserving honorees. We applaud both the staff and the board of the Southern Center for their tireless efforts to achieve equal justice for all. Enjoy this great occasion, and thank you all for being part of it.
I'm Maureen Del Duca. I'm the immediate past chair of the Board of Directors of the Southern Center for Human Rights, and I'm a Vice President and Deputy General Counsel at Northrop Grumman Corporation. Each of you joins us here this evening because of your personal and shared commitment to social justice, in particular, to the transformation of our criminal legal system. We thank you for your commitment to these crucial causes, and I welcome you warmly to our Southern Center family. I'm particularly grateful and proud that Northrop Grumman is a presenting sponsor of this evening's event. We live in challenging times. Our times are fraught with division, ignorance, fear, hate, racism, abuse of power. But as over the course of history, we must rise to the challenge of our time with love and unity to advance equity, inclusion, and fairness, particularly for the most vulnerable members of our community. I see in the work of the Southern Center, in the accomplishments of our honorees this evening, and in the life of Frederick Douglass himself, the strength and transformative power of hope, persistence, resilience, and hard work. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. As Frederick Douglass did, this evening's honorees demanded an end to an inhumane, brutal, and racist practice. This evening, we gather to celebrate the hope, persistence, resilience, and hard work that led to their success. And we gather to lift up my dear friends and colleagues at the Southern Center for Human Rights, especially the staff members who every day work tirelessly and fearlessly against the abusive power of racism, of poverty, and of indifference. They work to advance the safety, dignity, and fair treatment of the most vulnerable among us. And we thank you. Thanks to you all for your partnership and your investment in the Southern Center for Human Rights. We value your commitment to our work greatly. I know this evening's program is going to uplift us all and inspire us to continue to hope, to be persistent, to be resilient, and to continue to work hard as we walk the long and winding path towards social justice. Thank you for being here and enjoy this evening's program.
Welcome to the Southern Center for Human Rights Frederick Douglass Awards Dinner. To open the show, please enjoy music from Voices of Note.
I confess I am lost in the age of the social. On our knees, take a test to be loving and grateful. Shots were fired on the street by the church where we used to meet. Angel down, but the people just stood around. I'm a believer, it's a trial, foolish and weaker. I'd rather save an angel down. I'm a believer, rather save an angel down.
Doesn't everyone belong in the arms of the sacred? Why do we pretend we're wrong? Has our young courage faded? Shots were fired on the street by the church where we used to meet. Angel down. Angel down, why do people just stand around? Whoa, I'm a believer, it's a trial, foolish and weaker. Oh, I'd rather save an angel down. Oh,
I'm a believer, it's chaos.
I'd rather save an angel down. See that angel, hear that angel, catch my angel. See that angel, hear that angel, catch my angel. See that angel, hear that angel, catch my angel. See that angel, hear that angel, catch my angel. See that angel, catch my angel. See that angel. See that angel.
Good evening and welcome to the Southern Center for Human Rights 25th Annual Frederick Douglass Awards Dinner. I'm Terica Redfield Gansey and I serve with pride as SCHR's Deputy Director. All of us at the Southern Center are delighted that you are joining us tonight as we celebrate Michael Stone, Dale Brumfield, the Reverend Dr. LaKeisha Cook, and Benjamin Hoyne for the bold ways in which they went about doing what I'm sure many people said they could not: end the death penalty in Virginia. We are so proud to honor them tonight. We are excited to hear from our keynote speaker, the renowned Reginald Dwayne Bats, and we are thrilled to have been gifted with the musical performances by voices of note. I want to specially acknowledge our sponsors who made tonight's event possible. Thank you for supporting our mission. Tremendous thanks to our presenting sponsors, Northrop Grumman, Morrison and Forrester LLP, and Susan and Jeffrey Sussman, who have been sponsoring this event at the highest level for years. We are grateful for your unwavering partnership. If you would like to support our work, you can donate at any time during tonight's event by using the text to give information at the bottom of your screen or by visiting www.schr.org/donate. Tonight's program is dedicated to the memory and legacy of our friend and colleague Marissa Mccall Dodson, who served as SCHR's Public Policy Director. We dig deeper and fight harder to honor her. At the Southern Center, we're working for equality, dignity, and justice for people impacted by the criminal legal system in the Deep South. We are fighting for a world free from mass incarceration, the death penalty, the criminalization of poverty, and racial injustice. We envision a world in which the legal system is used not as a tool to concentrate power and control, but instead as an instrument of true justice by which individuals and communities remain accountable to each other. As we work to realize this vision, we hold these values true. We believe in our power to affect change. We choose this work in hope and optimism. We speak up and speak out. We advocate for people who are silenced and ignored. We challenge historic shameful norms. We actively confront the remnants of slavery in the South and agitate for systemic change. We grow, empower, and learn from coalitions of committed changemakers. We trust and uplift expertise. We shift perception. We unearth raw truths and weave them into compelling narratives to overcome prejudice and apathy. Thank you for partnering with us as we live out our values and work to achieve our vision for a better world. And now you will hear from Sarah J. Tatanchi, SCHR's Executive Director, as she tells stories of the power of strong partnerships and the courage of people most impacted by injustice. As Sarah celebrates her 20th year at SCHR and 11th year as Executive Director, she continues to lead in a way that inspires hope. We are proud to fight injustice together with Sarah every day.
Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, conditions in Georgia prisons have deteriorated to the point of a constitutional crisis. Prisons are grossly understaffed, and homicide and suicide rates have reached unprecedented levels. People are left locked in their cells nearly around the clock for weeks at a time without sufficient access to food, water, or showers. In my 20 years on the front lines of prison advocacy, I have never seen anything like this. The violence, the treatment of people who are ill, and the apathy of those who run the prisons are unconscionable and unacceptable. The great Angela Davis declared, "I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept." We cannot accept the reality of what is happening in Georgia prisons. We must demand accountability for the lives that have been lost and safety, dignity, and justice for the people who continue to suffer behind the walls. So, on September 14th, 2020, the Southern Center sent a letter to the United States Department of Justice urging them to intervene and investigate the human rights crisis that is unfolding every day in Georgia prisons. A year to the date later, just a few weeks ago, the DOJ announced that they are launching a statewide civil investigation into prisons of Georgia. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark said of the investigation that we must ensure the inherent human dignity and worth of everyone, including people who are incarcerated. We are so grateful to the DOJ. We recognize it as a significant step in our ongoing struggle. And we know there is still so much work that we must do to change. This year marks the 45th anniversary of the Southern Center for Human Rights and the 25th anniversary of the Frederick Douglass Awards. On such an auspicious occasion, I can think of no better honorees than the people who led the campaign to abolish the death penalty in Virginia, the first Southern state to reject it. I cannot wait for these extraordinary leaders to receive their recognition in just a few moments from now. All of us at the Southern Center for Human Rights take great inspiration from their vision and success and integrate their strategies as we seek to end the death penalty in our parts of the Deep South. Some of you are familiar with our work on behalf of our longtime friend and client, DeForest Johnson, whom we have represented for more than 2 decades. Earlier this year, the Washington Post ran an op-ed by former Alabama Attorney General Bill Baxley in which he declared that DeForest is an innocent man on death row. In the hours following the article being posted, I received literally dozens of calls, texts, emails, and tweets from members of the broader Southern Center community. All who reached out not only declared their belief of DeForest's innocence, but also shared the ways that DeForest changed their lives. In spite of being held on death row, innocent for the last 24 years, DeForest has had a profound impact on the lives of so many. His relationship with his family is strong and rich, even though they have been physically separated for so long. DeForest's impression on our team has been equally deep. He has generously trained up generations of Southern Center staff members and interns who have gone on to make major contributions in fighting the death penalty nationwide. For example, DeForest's impression on Southern Center alum Ty Alper has been so indelible that Ty continues to co-counsel his case with us 15 years after he left the Southern Center to co-lead UC Berkeley's death penalty clinic. Our relationship with DeForest has spanned nearly half of the Southern Center's 45-year existence. I know I am not alone in saying that our team is extraordinarily grateful to have been able to stay in this fight with him for this long, and for however long it takes, thanks to the generous support from so many of you. One thing I've been struck by this year is that while the Southern Center's commitment to our longtime clients and causes endures, we are continuing to evolve to meet the endless needs of this moment. Indeed, the uprisings for racial justice and the pandemic of 2020 made the fight for an end to mass incarceration, the death penalty, and racial injustice more urgent than ever. The Southern Center has emerged as the flagship organization for criminal legal reform in Georgia and beyond. The Southern Center is a leader in coalitions that are laying down strategies for transformative change, and we are the go-to resource and partner for so many, including unlikely allies. For example, less than 2 weeks after the one-year anniversary of the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, the Georgia House of Representatives unanimously passed legislation to repeal our citizens' arrest statute. This law dates back to medieval England and the United States colonial period, where it could take days for law enforcement to arrive at a crime scene. All 50 states have a version of this law in place. The racist implications of the law cannot be ignored. There are countless and tragic examples from the lynching era of white mobs claiming to exercise the right of citizens' arrest. And the same narrative continues into the current era, as in 2020, after the killing of Ahmaud Arbery while he jogged in Brunswick, Georgia. In January, following the tireless work of community organizers from Brunswick and across Georgia, our governor, Brian Kemp, declared that the repeal of the citizens' arrest statute was his top priority in 2021, and he sought out the counsel of our office to make it happen. The Southern Center's public policy team, led by our beloved friend and the Southern Center's public policy director, Marissa Mccall Dodson, who you will hear more about later, was central to the drafting and shepherding of this important legislation. We are proud of this work and thankful for the support of our diverse coalition partners who are standing with us in centering the truth about this law's racist history and brutal impact. When this legislation was signed by the governor, Georgia led the nation as the first state to repeal this type of archaic law. It was one more step in holding our state accountable for racial terror and the horrors of our history that continue today. I could not be more grateful to be in this struggle with the Southern Center's dedicated team of change agents. We will keep standing with those who are fighting for their freedom. We recognize the incredible privilege that we have been given, and we seek to center, honor, and uplift the humanity, dignity, and experiences of the people we represent in all that we do. This anniversary and this work would not be possible without the generosity of the Southern Center's community of supporters. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for your friendship and your generous support. Together, we will continue our struggle for equality, dignity, and justice for people impacted by the criminal legal systems in the Deep South into 2022 and beyond. We are no longer accepting the things we cannot change. We are changing the things we cannot accept. Reginald Dwayne Bats is an award-winning author, poet, lawyer, and outspoken advocate for criminal legal reform. Mr. Bats transformed himself from a 16-year-old kid sentenced to 9 years in prison to a critically acclaimed writer and graduate of Yale Law School. He has written 2 collections of poetry, the recently published and critically acclaimed Bastards of the Reagan Era and Shaheed Reads His Own Poem. Just a few weeks ago, he was named a 2021 MacArthur Fellow.
I want to thank the Southern Center for Human Rights for having me here today, albeit virtually. I want to say that this is about equality, dignity, and justice. I was talking about what I planned on saying tonight with a friend, and my friend said, well, but Dwayne, what do you have to say about the death penalty? And my friend reminded me that I don't have to have an opinion about everything. And then I reminded my friend that the first book that I read from cover to cover without stopping, when I got locked up, I was 16 years old. I was at the Fairfax County Jail. I was facing life in prison. And the first book that I read cover to cover without pausing was Ernest Gaines' A Lesson Before Dying. The book came out in 1994, and the premise was that it was this young kid, teenager, tried as an adult, like me, facing the death penalty, given a death penalty for a crime he didn't commit. And the whole premise was that he would go to the chair with dignity and not the pig that the prosecutor called him. I read that book wondering if all I wanted, all I needed was to find a way to have some type of dignity while serving whatever time they gave me. The thing is, I was sent to a prison called Sussex One State Prison. And I remember being on a yard. And now, when you were on the yard, you would walk the yard and you would try to talk to the people who were in the housing units, because they didn't really let the different units blend together and talk together. And so people would see their friends that they hadn't seen in years and they would start talking. And the thing is, they didn't have windows that opened at Sussex One State Prison. They had a window that was about as wide as my palm and about as long as one outstretched arm. We would get close to the window and shout, and the people on the other side of the cell, the people outside on the yard, would read our lips or try to hear us and just try to communicate. And I remember one afternoon we were on the yard, and a guy was talking to his friend who he thought was in a hole. And he asked his friend, when do you go home? And the friend said, I'm on death row. I didn't know the guy. I didn't know the man on death row, but I was exercising nearby and I heard the whole conversation, and I watched and read the man's lips and watched as the man in general population learned that his friend was on death row. There's a lot of ways to be crushed by prison. And one of the ways is to not be seen. And then when you are finally noticed, to be thought of as doomed. And I gotta be real, like on the yard that day, I didn't know how to respond to the death that just seemed always to be lurking. I came home from prison and I've had a chance to do a lot of things that I'm proud of, but like I told somebody, I dream in the language of prison. When I went to law school, my first year as a 1L, I carried around the letters of Glenn Mcginnis. Glenn Mcginnis was one of the last teenagers executed for a crime, one of the last men executed for a crime that he committed as a teenager. He was locked up in Texas, did time in Huntsville, and he would write letters to a friend of mine. They connected over books, so they would write these long letters talking about the books that they read. I carried his letters around in my backpack every single day. I carried his letters with me to Stephen Bright's death penalty course. I carried his letters with me to contracts. I carried his letters with me to property, to torts. I carried them every day as if the letters contained some story that I didn't know fully how to tell. And I still don't fully know how to tell this story. And part of it is because I think I went to law school to learn how to become a lawyer. That's what I thought. And then after graduating, even in the middle of being in law school, I immediately recognized that I went to law school to find ways to get my people free, to get my friends free. I realized that if I say something like equality, I mean freedom. If I say dignity, I mean freedom. If I say justice, I mean freedom. And we didn't get that to Glenn Mcginnis. I mean, I say his name now mostly because his name should be said in public spaces still, and it's not. I read his letters and I know that he was devastated by the crime he committed. And yet I read his letters and know that he deserved a shot at breathing on the outside, that he deserved more than to be executed by the state. I say the words equality, dignity, and justice. And I realized that I carried around his letters and I carried around these stories because part of all of this, part of what it means to be free is to chase freedom for others. I mean, right now you got this campaign that's saying that this must stop. And the desire for it to stop is not just a necessity for those inside. It's a necessity for us. I think ultimately, if we judge ourselves by how we treat those who have done the worst, then we're failing more than they failed. I don't know the name of the man that was on death row that day. Can you imagine that? To carry around the story of a man who has been told that he'll be executed. To carry around that man's story for decades and never know his name. The only thing worse is all of the names that belong to people in cells in Virginia and other states confronting death in prison, confronting execution, knowing that not enough of us say their names in public. I commend everyone listening to this for being committed to abolishing the death penalty in Virginia and being committed to saying the names of folks whose lives matter. Thank you.
Joya Aaron Thornton is an avid civil rights advocate, writer, historian, and policy leader. Joya joined the Southern Center as our national policy strategist in 2021 and is supporting campaigns to end the death penalty across the country.
William Howard Day, Leonard Grimes, Harriet Tubman, Ida Barnett Wells, Mary Church Terrell, William Lloyd Garrison, Frederick Douglass. These are a few of the names of the people whose shoulders we stand on in this tireless work of advocating and defending equality, dignity, and humanity in this country. When I first entered the death penalty space, I knew there were many battles we would fight to ultimately end capital punishment nationwide. There are a total of 22 states, plus Washington, D.C., that have ended the death penalty in the U.S. Another 3 states, California, Oregon, and Pennsylvania, have governor-imposed moratoriums. Still, there are 27 states, most of which are in the Deep South, that uphold the most barbaric form of intended justice by sustaining state-sanctioned murder. This year, the Commonwealth of Virginia was the very first state in the Confederate South to abolish the death penalty when Governor Ralph Northam signed Senate Bill 1165 and House Bill 2263, citing the prohibition of the use of capital punishment for any violation under Virginia law. This historic move was accomplished by several people who have been working to abolish the death penalty in Virginia for decades, many of whom devoted their time, heart, commitment, and resources to this cause. This year's win was a result of many battles won and lost, endless strategies, countless demonstrations and vigils, and through the cries of Capitol defenders, organizers, and activists pushing for human rights from the top to the ground. The death penalty system is fundamentally flawed. It is inequitable, ineffective, and has no place in the Commonwealth or this country. Governor Ralph Northam. It is my pleasure to present the Southern Center for Human Rights 2021 Frederick Douglass Human Rights Award to Michael Stone, Dale Brumfield, Reverend Dr. LaKeisha Cook, and Benjamin Hoyne for their vigorous service throughout the years.
The Southern Center for Human Rights is thrilled to celebrate Virginia's repeal of the death penalty and to honor the bold, persistent advocacy of Dale Brumfield, Michael Stone, Reverend Dr. LaKeisha Cook, and Benjamin Hoyne, the abolitionists who combined their talents for a multi-pronged approach that made Virginia the first Southern state to end capital punishment. Since Jonestown colonists carried out the nation's first execution in 1608 and went on to execute colonists for things like stealing grapes and killing chickens, Virginia has executed nearly 1,400 people. Virginia has executed 114 people, more than every other state except Texas, in the modern death penalty era. Racial disparities were enshrined in Virginia's early capital punishment laws, which provided that white defendants could be executed only for first-degree murder, while enslaved black defendants could be executed for numerous non-homicidal crimes. Even after those laws were declared unconstitutional, racial discrimination persisted. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, Virginia executed 73 black men, but not a single white person for non-homicidal crimes between 1900 and 1969. Of those executed for murder during that period, 185 were black and 46 were white.
It's great that we've been able to demonstrate a bipartisan approach to abolishing the death penalty, regardless of your political persuasion, your faith tradition, your view on criminal justice system. We all recognize that state-sanctioned killing is unjust and must be abolished.
When I joined the staff of Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, I joined with the mission of galvanizing support specifically in the African American faith community. I issued the call, and the call was answered in a monumental way. Hundreds of faith leaders joined their voices with ours in saying that it was time to end capital punishment here in Virginia.
For VADP, the COVID-19 pandemic forced us to totally rethink how we carry out our work. Dale and I had to educate, organize, and advocate for abolition in an entirely new way. We embraced Zoom as a tool for reaching people and engaging our supporters, allies, and legislators.
In citing the death penalty's link to lynching and explaining her support for the abolition bill, Virginia Senator Mamie Locke is quoted as saying, "In the 1940s and 50s, they simply moved from the outside to the inside, legal violence instead of vigilante justice." Virginia Senator Scott Suravel, who sponsored the abolition bill, said that racial disparities in the application of the death penalty persist. Supporters of the bill also pointed out that the death penalty is unreliable and does not deter crime.
The capital defense attorneys from the 1980s, the 1990s, and the early 2000s, their support, what they did cannot be overstated. They were tremendous in sometimes the darkest of times, doing work that was underappreciated and just sometimes just went nowhere. And to that end also, we have the 2004 Capitol Defense Offices who finally brought in high-powered attorneys who were able to blunt the forces of the prosecution, whereas before we never had much of a chance against them.
On March 24th of 2021, Governor Ralph Northam signed a bill to abolish the death penalty in Virginia. He signed the legislation at the Greensville Correctional Center, which houses the execution chamber used to carry out capital punishment by the Commonwealth of Virginia. This historic legislation makes Virginia the first state in the South to abolish capital punishment.
Finally, I want to lift up the voices of those who didn't make it this far, those in Virginia that died on death row, and those that continue to be on death row, both federally and in states across the country. I'm hopeful that we can keep them in our thoughts and lift them up as we continue to work on abolishing the death penalty once and for all in this entire nation.
There is a scripture that's in the Gospel according to Luke that says that if you have the faith of a mustard seed, You can speak to the mountain, and you can tell the mountain to move from here to there, and the mountain will move, because nothing is impossible with God. We thought when we first started this fight that the mountain would not move. But because of our collective faith, we were able to join our voices, and we said, "Move mountain" to capital punishment, and the mountain moved.
With this award, the Southern Center for Human Rights honors the recipients for their effective and innovative advocacy, unshakable commitment to seeking an end to the death penalty in Virginia and across the nation, and the palpable compassion that they express for those whom society would discard. Ladies and gentlemen, we salute Dale Brumfield, Michael Stone, Reverend Dr. LaKeisha Cook, and Benjamin Hoyne.
It was a tremendous effort by a lot of people, and to all of you, I've got 3 final words for you. We did it.
On May 21st, 2021, the Southern Center for Human Rights lost one of our shining stars. Marissa Mccall Dodson, our beloved public policy director, passed away at the age of 37. We miss her every day. Marissa's impact on our work is extraordinary. Her political acumen, irresistible personality, and unshakable and effective advocacy launched the Southern Center's policy efforts into the national sphere, bringing acclaim and hugely necessary resources into Georgia. She built a robust, dynamic, and effective policy practice within our office and was the go-to changemaker for so many people and organizations across the state and nation. Even in incredibly tough and unfriendly rooms, she did not mince words or pull punches as she fought for and alongside people whose lives had been harmed by racial injustice and mass incarceration. Marissa's light burned so brightly, illuminating the path forward. Her sheer brilliance and boundless passion transformed everyone she met and every room she entered. May we build upon Marissa's abundant legacy and ensure she is part of our future. It is my honor to introduce Marissa's sister, Dr. Denisha Mccall. Denisha is a neonatologist in Indiana and was Marissa's soulmate. We are so grateful to her for agreeing to share this piece in honor of Marissa.
Marissa Shante Mccall, House of Dodson, first of her name, embodiment of royalty, queen of grace, mother to sunshine, raiser of a king, slayer of justice, assassin of vocabulary, acquirer of knowledge, executioner of lies, speaker of truth, superhero of diction, supreme justice, champion of legislation, opponent of racism, proponent of purpose, mentor to visionary leaders, one of a kind, light of the world and salt of the earth, duchess of purple, giver of hope, distributor of peace, righter of wrongs, conqueror of battles, saver of lives, rocker of busy clothes, a California peach, face of an angel, smile of joy, courier of compassion, expression of God's perfection, a sister that is better than yours, guardian of love, changer of the world.
Don Verrilli, a partner at Munger, Tolles & Olson, is one of the nation's premier Supreme Court and appellate advocates. For 5 years, he served as Solicitor General of the United States of America, arguing successfully in defense of the Affordable Care Act and in support of marriage equality in Obergefell versus Hodges. We are so proud to claim him as one of ours, as a Southern Center for Human Rights board member since 2016.
Good evening, everyone. Before the pandemic, when we could gather in person, the Frederick Douglass dinner was always one of my favorite nights of the year. Every year I would leave the dinner inspired and full of hope. And while we haven't been able to gather in person these past 2 years, I hope tonight's virtual event has had that same inspiring effect on you. It certainly has on me. If you step back and think about it, it is absolutely amazing that our honorees, Michael Stone, Dale Brumfield, the Reverend Dr. LaKeisha Cook, and Benjamin Hoyne are receiving the Human Rights Award for their work in abolishing the death penalty in the Commonwealth of Virginia. In Virginia, what a triumph for justice. When these dinners started 25 years ago, the idea that Virginia would abolish the death penalty, through legislation no less, was almost impossible to imagine. And Dwayne Bats, what an incredible life, and what an incredible message. What it means to be free is to chase freedom for others. And that, of course, is what the Southern Center has been doing for 45 years, with passion, with brilliance, with resilience, and with love for justice, and with love for their clients. It is the most important, inspiring work that lawyers can do. And it is because of all of you who joined us tonight and your extraordinary generosity that the Southern Center can continue to chase freedom for others and to advance dignity, equality, and justice for all. So on behalf of the Southern Center, thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all you do. And good night.
I will rise with all my daughters, I will rise against my foes, I will rise with all the mothers, I will carry all their woes. I will rise to fight for freedom, I will rise though faced with fears, I will rise against all hatred while my eyes are veiled in tears.
I will rise for religious freedom, for a rich diversity. I will rise for all the weary, for each lonely refugee. I will work for all our women who deserve equal pay. I will work for all our children who await a better day. Sisters, oh, stand with me, rise up hand in hand. Oh, stand with me, we will rise to spread love across this bitter land. I will rise for love and justice, that we may see a better day. I will rise in peace and service for a world in disarray. I will rise with all my brothers for all those who cannot stand.
I will rise with all our fathers who have lost home and land. I will rise to build up bridges for this broken world we see. I will tear the walls